Welcome to our backyard. This is the Backyard Philosophy Podcast. We are two friends having a discussion after everyone else has passed out or gone to bed. Grab a drink and listen as we discuss everything from automation, space exploration, and why the meaning of life is 42.
The Wild West has astonished millions and will be an era remembered for centuries to come. Many times romanticized with the history of outlaws, the frontier, and of course, the iconic cowboys. During this era in American history, many legends were crafted and formed under that western sky. But for this American tale, this legend, a legend who changed cowboying and rodeo forever, we focus on Bill Pickett, the man who grabbed the bulls by the horn. But before we talk about a man who may have been a man amongst boys, Nick, how are you? And what are you drinking?
I am doing great. I got some Rogue Dead Guy ale here with me. What about yourself?
Very appropriate. I got some Texas whiskey. I got some Baboon whiskey bourbon. And yes, our story kind of starts with a sad and also happy beginning. It starts with the end of a civil war, the American Civil War. A Thomas Jefferson Pickett, finally freed with the Confederates losing the Civil War, and a Mary Janie Gilbert, who was also freed with the Union winning. They would find and marry one another. Mary, supposedly the daughter of the plantation owner, would have some Cherokee or be Cherokee. It was hard to figure this information out, but this would be important information. Thomas Jefferson Pickett and Mary Jane Gilbert would marry and have a home in Texas and have 13 children. The second born of the 13 would be a Bill Pickett, born December 5th, 1870, in Williamson County, Texas. Bill and his siblings would have a hard but honest life, working hard and unfortunately receiving little education, but Bill would make it to the 5th grade, where he would have enough with school and leave both school and home to go work as a ranch hand. While getting his new education, learning out in the prairie, Bill would become an excellent cowboy, able to break and rope the toughest of horses and control the meanest of bulls. He would even enter his first rodeo in 1888 in Taylor, Texas, around the age of 18. From there, he would marry Maggie Turner and have 9 children, and would become such a master at being a cowboy. He and his brothers would start the Pickett Brothers Busters and Rough Riders Association, a horse-breaking, cattle-wrangling business. Now, it's not the best name I've heard for a business, but definitely gets the point across.
It's a pretty sweet name, not gonna lie.
And for those who don't know, for I realize that we have listeners perhaps not familiar with horses and livestock, breaking a horse is not physically breaking the horse, but rather spiritually.
Oh my gosh, I never even thought about that.
I was trying to explain to a friend what episode I was going to record, and he goes, "What's breaking a horse?" And I went, "What?" It's, for those unfamiliar, it's teaching a horse how to be familiar with being ridden and not buck, bite, and hurt people.
That's hilarious. I never thought about just what the term breaking a horse implies if you're not familiar with the process.
Yeah, the process is you get on the horse and you try your very best not to get off as it bucks and tries to get you
I'm just
off.
Imagining someone just like trying to bend a horse in half. This is how you make glue, right?
Oh, yeah, if you have enough bones. Well, anyhow, Bill got really good at this. He became a really good cowboy. And Nick, I think you can contest to this. When you've done something long enough and become efficient or so good you can do it in your sleep, you start to mess around and play and try new things at your craft.
Yeah, and I believe the technical term is actually cowboy. If you've been a cowboy long enough, you just become a cowboy on the bigger operations.
Well, with being so good at it and kind of getting bored doing the same thing over and over again, one day Bill got an idea in his head. An idea from a dog. Dogs have been farmers' trusty ally since man has had livestock. And dogs themselves have some interesting way of managing testy cows. Sometimes these dogs, a certain type of dog, will be called the hanging tree dog, which grabs the steer by the horn, ear, or lips and are able to pull and flip a cow over. A practice called bulldogging. Well, Bill, probably seeing this multiple times throughout his life, figured, hell, if a dog can do
I can do it.
I bet I can do it too. Yeah. So, Bill being Bill, would get on his horse, chase down a steer, jump from his horse onto a steer, grabbing it by the horns and neck, sticking his feet in the ground, then flipping the cow over. And this is where it gets crazier. After doing this a few times, and then if it was a larger steer and he couldn't turn it over with his own body, he would position himself while jumping off the horse so that he could bite the steer's lip like a dog to help him flip the cow over. The idea of a 5'7", who, let's be honest everyone, in this time, being malnourished was everyone. So a small 5'7" cowboy jumping from his horse onto a bull, then twisting the bull, biting its lip to bring it down. And to do so, time after time, this wasn't a party trick. This was a union between cowboy and dog. He mastered a skill. And I'll be honest with you, Nick, makes me kind of envious of the no fucks given by this man.
I mean, you need a little sense of danger to make things fun every now and then. But you're taking something that's already dangerous and making it even more dangerous, which is, I mean, that's the American dream.
Bill apparently had a saying, which I think speaks a lot about the character and type of man he was. He would say, and I quote, "What's going to happen, going to happen." That was pretty much one of the main phrases he constantly used. And when a cowboy, especially a horse-jumping, bull-biting, steer-wrangling cowboy says that, it makes you really think, man,
it's going to happen.
They don't make them like they used to. Yeah, it's going to happen. Now, it's not clear if he's the original inventor of bulldogging, but he did perfect the technique, and he did popularize it. After some time, Bill started doing his technique at local fairs and events, and the crowds absolutely loved it. Bill started to do more fairs and rodeos, showcasing his steer wrestling. And since Bill looked more Native American than black during these racist times, he was able to say he was 100% Cherokee so that he could be in rodeos where the prejudice wouldn't let him be or let black cowboys participate. His fame started to grow. In the local rodeo first, steer wrestling started to become a staple in events, with Bill Picket as the main lead. Then, in 1903, at a show, Bill would get the nickname Dusky Demon, a name that got him more fame and publicity. Eventually, the 101 Ranch Wild West show caught wind of him and wanted him to join the extravaganza, wanted him to join their event. And in 1905, Bill would join the 101 Ranch, and his cowboy career in the public light would explode. I guess stars do shine brighter in Texas.
Deep in the heart of Texas.
A quick little sidebar. The 101 Ranch Wild West show, not the best name, has itself its own interesting history. The 101 Ranch was owned and run by the Miller family, started by former Confederate George Miller, and would be taken over by his 3 sons. The ranch itself has a crazy history of being around 100,000 acres at its biggest, would employ thousands of people, and apparently be completely self-sufficient ranch. Basically, the Miller Ranch was more of a town or city than an average ranch. And as for the 101 show itself, it would have some big names come and go throughout its time, perhaps the biggest being they had Buffalo Bill for a short time. And the biggest the 101 show ever got was, for a week-long event, they got 64,000 people.
That's, I mean, just in a time without cars, imagine 6,000 people traveling to an area to see something. Like, that's
Like that's actual traveling.
No, I didn't say 6,000. I said 64,000.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's even crazier than 6,000. It's 64,000. It's yeah, that journey the people had to make, they had to make shanty towns. They had to.
Hoovervilles, if you will.
Well, right century, wrong time.
Just a little bit off.
Well, back to Bill Picket. You see, Bill joined the early stages of the one-on-one show, so as he grew, so did the show. The show, along with his steer wrestling, started to become famous. So famous that they were able to travel now. And not just locally, nor just nationally. The shows got so big, they were able to travel internationally. Traveling to Europe, to Mexico, South America, to Canada, all over the United States. From Texas to the Madison Square Garden, from England to South America, Bill was able to perform his steer wrestling ability. Now, the one-on-one show wasn't a year-round event. Like many things, it would have seasons. And when Bill wasn't working or traveling with the one-on-one show, he would still work on nearby ranches and do local shows. A true cowboy. He never stopped riding. But one show would definitely change his perspective on how the entertainment life was and would in turn endanger his life. Let me tell you about Bill Picket and a show down in Mexico. Now, in Mexico, as is now, as it was back then, cowboys and bullfighting have a certain popularity and romance to them. Bullfighting being huge, partly because their former conquerors, Spain, loved it, but nonetheless a huge staple integrated into the Mexican cowboy life. The one-on-one show thought they liked bullfighting. Surely they must like steer wrestling. Just makes sense, right? Wrong. Apparently, the Mexican people thought bulldogging was fake, outrageous, and a disgrace to bullfighting. So this is how the story goes. There's definitely some details missing or changed over time. History and people have a tendency to do that. But down in Mexico, someone bet the Millers, the owner of the one-on-one ranch, that Bill Picket wouldn't survive against a Spanish fighting bull. Couldn't outlast or bring the bull down in 4 to 5 minutes. The Millers said he could. The Mexican people said he couldn't. Bill said, "I'll give it a try." Thousands showed up from everyday citizens, cowboys, and Mexican government officials. Money, pride, and life all on the line. A true spectacle to see. The bull was let loose, along with Bill and his trusty steed. Around and around, Bill tried to get an angle on the bull, but the bull kept changing directions too rapidly, zigging and zagging. Trying not to risk the safety of his horse, the chase would drag on. The Millers would tell Bill he was going to have to risk his horse to win. Reluctantly, he knew the Millers were right. So Bill decided to be even riskier and take the one and only chance he would get. Bill would ride his horse neck and neck with the bull, waiting for the right opportunity. The bull would turn its head, spear the horse. Don't worry, the horse would live, if the tale and all information is telling the truth, so maybe live, maybe not. And Bill would leap off his horse onto the neck of a pissed-off Mexican-Spanish fighting bull. The bull would go berserk, trying with all its might to get the 5'7" Bill Picket off its neck. With the clock still ticking, Bill would wrap his arms as tight as he could around the bull's neck and squeeze, trying to choke out the bull. When that wasn't working, he used his legs to block the bull's nose and mouth to deprive it of oxygen. That started to work. The bull began to tire. Being chased, grabbed, and choking tends to do that to the mightiest creatures. I would like to also point out, Bill at this time was around 40 years old, plus or minus 5 years. It wasn't easy to find exact dates. To me, this is all crazy. A 40-year-old man, small in stature, trying to choke out a bull with his arms around its neck and his feet by its nose. I don't think I would have believed it with my own eyes.
I'm just playing it in my head. It's like, I guess that makes sense, but I don't believe it.
Well, the Mexican crowd did not like that. They wanted Bill to lose, and they fucking hated that he was starting to win. The crowd came for blood, Bill Pickett's blood. They wanted to see him gouged and dead, but now they were seeing Bill winning the fight. Well, if the bull's not going to give blood, I guess the crowd will make Bill give blood. The crowd was at an uproar, rage filled the masses, and then the crowd began throwing bricks and bottles at Bill while he's still on the bull. Bill would be peppered by thrown objects, receive multiple broken bones, not from wrestling the bull, but from the crowd throwing glass and rocks at him. The Millers and Bill knew it was high time to get the hell out of there. Apparently, the crowd wanted the one-on-one show members dead so bad, and were aiming to do so, that the Mexican government had to send soldiers or officers to escort them to safety.
Mexico's changed so much in those times.
The members of the one-on-one show got the hell out of there safely. Some bruises and some broken bones, but alive at least. And if the story is to be believed, apparently, one of the Miller brothers, the next day, went back to collect his winnings. Bill and the one-on-one show would have wild adventures, even at a time being jailed in Europe because some Europeans thought biting a bull's lip while holding on for your dear life was barbaric and animal cruelty.
Says the conquerors of the known world.
Yeah. Well, it's, yeah. Bill would retire from the show
The brother who went back to get the money in Mexico, did he get the money?
Zach Miller? I believe so. I believe it was 25,000 pesos.
Nice.
Yeah. It was not a small sum for, especially if you're in a carnival rodeo kind of situation. It definitely was probably worth the risk. A few years, though, later, Bill would retire from the show in 1916 at the age of 46, where, with his wife, he would buy his own ranch in Chandler, Oklahoma, and continue to break horses. Still, once in a while, showing off his world-famous trick. How famous, you may ask, from touring the world, performing in radios? Well, he would become a household name. So much so that he became the first black cowboy ever to appear on the big screen. His first movie, 1921, The Crimson Skull, followed by the next year, in 1922, The Bulldogger, he would both be in. Which, I can't imagine how proud his parents, if they were still alive to see it. I'm not sure when they passed. I believe at this point they would most likely be dead, but you have to remember, Bill's father was a slave who became free because of the Civil War. And Bill was able to rise to become a world-traveling showman, being in some of the first movies in the world, and be so good at being a cowboy, he introduced a new event to rodeo. He invented steer wrestling. It is important to note the one-on-one show continued to tour after Bill left, although taking hiatus for World War I for obvious reasons. And eventually, all good things must come to an end, and Father Time always wins. In 1929, Bill's wife Maggie would pass. A few years later, in 1931, the ranch, no longer the small city it once was, no longer the show, was in financial trouble, and their empire they built was falling apart. So in 1931, the Millers asked Bill for help, to help be a cowboy once again and help them on the ranch. Bill would return to the ranch to help them. To describe Bill's big heart and character, I want to quote one of Bill's friends, Will Rogers, who said, and I quote, "Bill Pickett never had an enemy. Even the steers wouldn't hurt old Bill." For some time, Bill would work on the Millers' ranch. Then in late March 1932, as the horses were being rounded up to be sold, someone asked Bill to separate a few horses so the ranch wouldn't be horseless. Bill would be roping a stallion when the horse he was trying to grab would buck and kick, kicking Bill in the head and putting him into a coma. Being rushed to aid, but never waking up again. Bill would survive about another week while in a coma before passing on April 2nd, 1932 in Pontiac City, Oklahoma. He was 61 years old. He was buried on the Millers Ranch near a 15-foot-tall stone monument called White Eagle Monument. He lived as a cowboy, and he died as a cowboy. But his legend doesn't end with his death, oh no. Bill was able to create something that would far outlive him. Bill created a new sport, a sport that lives on today. Although today's cowboys tend just to pull on the horns rather than bite the steer's lip. Eventually, in 1971, Bill would be introduced into the Hall of Fame as the first black rodeo athlete. Statues in both Fort Worth and Taylor, Texas, would be put up to honor Bill Picket. Then, in 1994, the United States decided to pay homage to the legendary Bill Picket by producing a stamp with Bill Pickett's image. Only, you see, it's the federal government doing something, which means they're going to mess it up. While making stamps of Bill Picket, they used the wrong Picket. The U.S. government used Ben Picket, Bill's brother, instead of Bill. The family would tell the government that they were using the wrong photo, and the government would stop printing the stamps immediately. Only, they already made 5 million of them, using the wrong Pickett's photo. The government would buy back and try to collect all of their mistakenly printed stamps. And because of this, because of their mistake, the Picket stamp is one of the highest sought after stamp for stamp collectors. Even in death, Bill knows how to put on a show. And in recent years, Bill's getting some nods and homages in the Hollywood scene, having his name used in a tongue-in-cheek homage in the 2021 Western movie, The Harder They Fall. And for those wondering if steer riding is animal cruelty, multiple studies have been done by multiple countries. The Aussies got into steer wrestling. Of course they did. But studies show the average in rodeos of animals getting hurt range from 0.0004% to 0.072%. So almost none. I will make the caveat though, not a lot of studies have been done if animals are getting hurt during practice sessions. So there could be something there. But at rodeos at least, animals aren't getting hurt. It's usually only people getting hurt. But Bill Picket, a man who stands as a legendary cowboy, he changed the rodeo world and brought a new sport into the public's eye. From all accounts, he was kind, hardworking, good man, with nerves of steel. A man who would jump off his horse onto a steer and bring it down with his bare hands, or occasionally with his teeth. He is the stuff of myth and legend, and important chapters in both the Wild West and the cowboy culture. So, I guess if we can take anything from this man's legacy is that sometimes you just got to make the jump and grab the bull by the horns.
Nice.
Yeah, that's the cowboy and legend Bill Picket, Nick. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope everyone listening enjoyed.
Thanks for listening to the Backyard Philosophy Podcast. We rarely finish a podcast without missing a point we wanted to bring up, so let us know what we forgot. And if you have a topic you want us to talk about, let us know at Backyard Philosophy on Instagram and Backyard Philosophy Podcast on Facebook.